Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Daugherty with Kyle Dvorchak. It is our Week 13 waiver wire Q&A, but really any fantasy question you might have. The playoffs are just around the corner. We're all just trying to survive, really trying to survive the bye apocalypse this week, Kyle, where for some reason we're like, 70% of the way through the season, and then 6 teams are on bye. A quarter of the league still hasn't had its bye yet. Not really sure what's up with this schedule making.
A lot of bad teams, though, right? Like the Raiders are on there. I guess the problem, like the Raiders, they funnel all their plays to 2 guys. That actually does matter. The Giants have quietly gotten okay, at least. I don't remember the other teams. Who else do we have?
I don't know, but you and I also on the podcast, I'm pulling them up. We said last night on our pod that the buys were over after this week. That was a lie.
Nuh-uh. Are you serious?
Dude, that's why I'm saying a quarter of the league. There's 6 this week and then 2 next week. This week is the Bills, which is a problem. The Bears, which is a problem. The Raiders is a problem. Vikings, Giants, and Ravens. So actually a lot of fantasy relevant players out this week. Week 14 is the Cardinals and Commanders. A little less problematic, but still not great. But amidst that backdrop, not a good week on waivers at all. The options are very, very limited. Do you even have anyone you could call the ad of the week on the Week 13 waiver wire?
Yeah, certainly a not in my league special, but Pat Freiermuth spending a big chunk of the season on injured reserve did get dropped in over half of Yahoo leagues, so he more likely than not is available for you, coming off of over 100 yards on 9 catches, and the Steelers' offense looking somewhat revitalized in the absence of Matt Canada. So it's Pat Freiermuth.
And by the way, feel free to get your questions in. We've got a few rolling in. Do not be bashful. No question that is too dumb. We're going to answer anything.
Say sick, degenerate.
Yeah, you guys all ask. Yeah, that's true. Nothing is like too deep to ask. So do not be afraid to get in your questions. We're going to answer all of them. But I was just wondering, did you see how depraved some of these Matt Canada stats were, by the way? So
like 44 consecutive games without 400 yards on offense.
AKA
right?
his entire tenure. So
Yes.
You want to know the last time they had 400 yards of offense? The
Does
final
it count
game,
playoffs?
The final game before they hired him. And then the first time, the 2 most recent 400-yard Steelers games were the final game before he was hired and the first game after he was fired. Seems a bit of an indictment. I don't know if that includes playoffs. I'm sure that Browns playoff game.
That was my thought.
But was he even the coordinator then? He might not have.
No,
been.
I don't think so. And I'm thinking that's why it probably does count playoffs. And they lost that game, right? That was the dead last game before they hired Canada. And ever since then, it's been bad. And even like that team, Ben Roethlisberger was a husk of a quarterback at that point. But it goes to the point that the Panthers have had a handful of 400-yard games since Matt Canada was hired. 400 is not an insane bar.
No, it's not.
Teams get there pretty regularly, except the Steelers until now.
It is shy. And not that we think like Kenny Pickett's about to become an actual franchise quarterback or anything, but I just think this speaks to the over-reliance on scheme. You know, every team needs a scheme. That's like the dumbest thing I could possibly say. Of course, you're going to have a scheme, but this idea that players can like never freelance, they have to stick within the confines of the system no matter what, which is clearly what was going on with Kenny Pickett. Again, not that he's like some star, but the second the Canada system is gone, the scheme is out. He's throwing deep a little more often. It was really bad. Bengals defense, one allowing a lot of chunk gains this year, but it's really highlighting that I think so many teams are kind of losing sight of maybe we should let the football players play football.
Yeah, the football player should decide what the scheme is, and then it's the coach's job to create a scheme that teases the best out of its players. And we see so often that, like half the league, between a quarter and a half, probably somewhere around a third of the league, has zero flexibility, a perfectly rigid scheme, which unless you happen to luck into the exact right players for that scheme, is going to cause problems. And the Steelers are the picture-perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's like you said, of course you got to have a bare bones. Not even bare bones. You have to have some skeleton in place. But, man, you got to have some flexibility. And you got to let them – the same thing with the Jets. As bad as Zach Wilson is, you're not going to ever score points if the young man is never allowed to throw deep. And just like this obsession has got to go. But we've got a lot of questions rolling in, so the monologuing has got to go. First from Michelle. She's here almost every week. Carrying the Chiefs and Browns defense heading into the playoffs. Wondering if Atlanta, Kyle, is a better option than Cleveland with their injuries. Atlanta has the Jets, the Bucks, Panthers. Well, it's a good schedule. And the Saints. What do you think? I don't know. How worried are we about the Browns and Myles Garrett, who felt a, quote, pop in his shoulder, but also pledged to continue playing, Kyle?
Yeah, I think we got a few earlier today that he's like day to day with like not like non-serious injury. Maybe he still misses a week. We'll see. But it seems like a week or two at most, as of what I saw this morning, vaguely scrolling on Twitter. So not too concerned with the Browns' defense.
Are they kind of getting in that jet zone though, where their offense could be so bad that it derails the defense?
Certainly doesn't help. I don't think it derails them because I do think they're so good on defense that it does not derail them. But you'd love for them to also have an offense that can really put opposing offenses on the back burner. They have most of it covered. I still think it's more important to be a good defense to put up defensive points. It certainly helps if you have an offense that can pitch in a little bit. I'm not concerned with them. Obviously, that is like one drawback. I know they don't have the best schedule to, I guess I was gonna say early in the season, I know they didn't, but I'm sure at some point they probably get to play. Do they get to play the Bengals again at some point or something?
I'm looking it up right now. The Browns are closing the season with at Los Angeles versus Jax versus Justin Fields at Houston. They do have the Jets in week 17, but the Falcons schedule looks a lot better than the Browns schedule. I will say that, Michelle.
I mean, honestly, like this week, there's almost certainly no one worth cutting on waivers when you have like a really good defense in Cleveland. But I'd probably swap Atlanta for Kansas City and then also be comfortable dropping Cleveland if something comes up in the next few weeks that you need to, because like they have a what is the opposite of a murderer's row? They have like a charity row of just free turnovers.
Yeah.
Just free turnovers, free sacks, like Atlanta does in the Jets. Like the Bucs is the best team out of this group. I get maybe it's the Saints.
And they're still a streaming target too as an offense.
Yeah, exactly. They're like a below average offense, and they're the best team. So honestly, be comfortable dropping Cleveland. You almost certainly don't have to make that decision this week, luckily.
So thank you so much for all the questions. We're going to get to them all. Here's Joseph. Well, think about Dalton Kincaid or Isaiah Likely. Kincaid finally had sort of a quiet game. Isaiah Likely is kind of one of those classic plug-and-play streamers that never seems to quite go according to plan, Kyle. I think Kincaid's probably the pretty obvious answer here. I'm assuming you would agree with that. The Bills are in bye this week. What would you tell Joseph about Isaiah Likely and his prospects? Any chance he's actually a tight end one?
Yeah, I mean, he saw, I believe it was 6 targets on one of the better passing attacks in the NFL this past week. And we got the report going into the game that they're not going to change the playbook very much. I mean, it was like, they weren't going to change it at all without Mark Andrews. That doesn't mean he's going to earn Mark Andrews level targets, but they're going to try and use him in similar ways. So I think Likely is fringe tight end one rest of season. And he gave us a little bit of that. At least he was out there running routes and earning targets this past week. But Dalton Kincaid is like a 20% plus target share in a better passing attack in Buffalo. There's Likely is good. Kincaid is a rest of season top 4 tight end for me, top 5, somewhere in that range.
I guess Dawson Knox could maybe be coming back in week 14.
It's gonna be so frustrating. It might happen and it would be awful, but Kincaid is 100% earned the right for us to never see Dawson Knox again. Does that mean that will happen?
I think the Bills are desperate enough that they probably aren't going to really change it up. And Knox might be out there, and maybe he'll kind of take targets from everyone, but I don't think he's just going to like take Dalton Kincaid's targets or anything like that. Real quick on the Ravens, I will say, would like more than 180 yards against the Chargers for their passing attack. It wasn't really that. I feel like it was the only one in America who wasn't like crowning Zay Flowers in fantasy this morning. I don't know. He had 25 yards against the Chargers. Like, not sure I'm like jumping for joy about that. But we'll get into that, I'm sure, on all of our
This
shows.
is one I'll give you a pass, because you've done this with the Ravens a few times after they dropped like 30 balls. 20 points against the Chargers. That's not that special. And it's not like their ground game destroyed. In those games that you complained about the Ravens, it was because Gus Edwards had 3 touchdowns. Keaton Mitchell killed 1 drive with a 40-yard touchdown. Like, we got some good running plays, like obviously the Zay Flowers one, but they weren't dropping multiple 100-yard games. They had 1 rushing touchdown. So you're allowed to be a little disappointed in this one.
We have a few Keaton Mitchell questions coming up, by the way. First, we'll get to Jerry. He's here every week. Yeah, for some reason, I love these kind of questions. He's ahead by 12, half-point PPR. Should he play Jordan Addison or Khalil Herbert this evening? He's facing DJ Moore, a.k.a. he's facing ceiling. What should Jerry do?
I'm probably playing Khalil Herbert. I think you're very likely to pull through with like 14 touches from Khalil Herbert. And the floor-ceiling combo, like you're playing from a lead. The floor ceiling combo with Addison, just by nature of being a wide receiver, is going to be much more stratified. You know, he could have, I mean, that's who he is too. He's also the guy who, if he breaks one long down the seam, he gets a 40-yard touchdown. And if he doesn't, it's a 4 for 45 day. So I'll probably take Herbert here.
Yeah, I think it's a classic situation where I'm just going with the running back touches, even though that might not feel great. But there's some ceiling there for Khalil Herbert as well. Baird has an interesting. He's got to drop someone to plug in a defensive player. Thank you, Baird, for not asking us about the defensive players. I should be dropping Amari Cooper, who picked up an injury yesterday, is struggling with, quote, DTR under center. Jake Ferguson with the Cowboys or Keaton Mitchell. Who should Baird be dropping?
Assuming you're thinking about dropping Ferguson because you're not starting him, like if you only had one tight end, I assume you wouldn't consider him as a drop. I would say it's Ferguson. But, like, you could also swing me on Cooper because he's also not someone you're really considering starting.
I don't know about that. I feel like they're going to figure out a way to get him more involved over Elijah
He's
Mitchell,
seeing
David
all
Njoku.
the targets still. That's the problem, is they're still looking his way. They literally have the worst 1-2 punch at quarterback this year. And Bryce Young plays football. And Tommy DeVito plays football. And Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle play football.
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln. Yeah.
If we see the reason I'm saying still I'm cutting the tight end Ferguson is because I legit think if we see Joe Flacco, Cooper should be able to get back. Like the bar for Cooper getting back to wide receiver 2 numbers is so low. You don't need to get average quarterback play. Just get not 32nd out of 32 teams. And I think Joe Flacco gets from 27, right?
Yeah. So the national anthem ends. Joe Flacco, I can't think of the word. Puts out a cigarette on the bench, goes in and immediately targets Amari Cooper 13 times. We do need Joe Flacco for that. I can't think of the word for when you put out a cigarette. There's a specific word. Don't smoke, kids. Aiden, you're too young to even know anything about cigarettes, Kyle. Aiden is wondering, should he trade?
You're talking about the off button on my vape?
Yeah. Should Aiden trade? Oh my gosh. Should Aiden
It's not
trade?
a vape. It's a lighter for my candles.
There you go. All right. Whatever you say. Should
Whoa,
Aiden trade?
The candle's right here.
There you go. Should he trade Tony Pollard for Davante Adams? Tony Pollard, everyone's favorite lightning rod these days in fantasy football.
Yes. Final answer.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so hard because the Cowboys,
two of the biggest disappointments of the season.
Unit. Yeah.
I think you bet on positive Tony Pollard touchdown regression down the stretch.
Buddy, there's no money in the bank. Let the bet pack. Come on.
There's not. It is true. But it's a very even trade, Aiden. I'm assuming you're doing it because you really need receiver help. And you have other options than Tony Pollard. If that's the case, it's a perfectly fair, even trade. Enrique needs to drop one of Tajay Spears, Ty Chandler, or Zach Charbonnet. It is a keeper league. Who is the least likely to have value as a keeper for next year?
That's Chandler by like 10 miles. I mean,
it is unfortunate, but it probably is Chandler.
I mean, that's even with like Ken Walker is great and will probably, once he returns, keep Charbonnet as a backup. But there's a very obvious scenario where, again, Ken Walker gets hurt. And at that point, like, especially like, God forbid, it's like a season ending injury in the offseason. Charbonnet is like a first round pick at that point. There's just not that type of scenario for Chandler. Whereas like, sure, maybe we're drafting them kind of close next year, but there's no asymmetric upside with Chandler. And Spears is like very obvious. Like Derrick Henry is on the back burner. This team is clearly ready for a rebuild. I think he's more likely to be gone next year than stay.
And it's also just a classic case of a dynasty. Charbonnet and Spears are two guys who came out and earned touches as rookies, whereas Ty Chandler was totally mothballed as a rookie last year and was option C in this backfield this year.
They tried to play Cam Akers over him. Come
exactly. On. So, yeah, that does not, unfortunately, speak well for the young man in dynasty. Is Keaton Mitchell worth a stash? He is frustrating everybody. He's not getting enough touches, Kyle, but he's swinger, unlimited workloads. Are we still stashing Keaton Mitchell?
Yeah, we finally saw his workload grow a little bit, as in he's not like a 6-touch, like quarter of a fifth of the team snaps, guys. He got up to just shy of half of the team snaps. Oh, I'll be using this in 32 stats. His snap share has grown in every single game, technically, of his career, all the way up to 47% last week. Still not getting a ton of work, but also 40% of the routes, just shy of 40%. So he's out there for passing downs. That's also a good way to utilize him. He's playing more snaps than usual. Like, we're trending in the right direction, and maybe coming, you said they're on bye this week? Maybe coming out of the bye. Yeah. Maybe coming out of the bye, though, is the perfect time for them to finally get him a dozen touches.
I thought you were saying finally score some points. But
who do they play? Who do they play? Maybe they can run for 400 and disappoint you in that way again.
They come out of bye against the Los Angeles Rams, so the slightly better LA defense than the one they only put up 20 points on in week 12. But I don't know why I'm always choosing the Ravens offense. It's very, very good. The Ravens offense, there's like a disconnect between real life and fantasy because it's very effective in getting what it needs to get done in real life. And it's just not
and they run the ball so well, and we don't love to see that, but they also run the ball well with 6 different guys, which we also, from a fantasy perspective, isn't super useful to us. And they throw long touchdowns to Nelson Aguilar every third week. It's heinous things, but it gets points on the board.
I feel like I learn a little bit more about Lindorfin's username every week. That makes a lot of sense. I've narrowed it down to Francisco Lindor and the Dolphins, but it's apparently not a Dolphins. He says thoughts on Tyler Kraft. I'm assuming he means Tucker Kraft on the Green Bay Packers. He's been making bad choices between Kyle Pitts and Logan Thomas all season, itching to make a change. Would you drop either of them for Tucker Kraft? I'm going to lean no, but what do you think, Kyle?
Oh, man. I mean, we played on one of my main event teams for making the playoffs, lost the choice between Pitts and Tucker Kraft. Wouldn't have mattered, but it was emblematic of our season, playing Kyle Pitts just in the most futile sense. Pitts' role has declined in every single week over the past month or two. He went from being
it's Joker,
a wide receiver. Yeah, I in 32 stats, which I'm already working on, he's like a mid-range tight end too. I kind of called it quits on him. We were trending that way for weeks, but they went from using him as this outside field stretching tight end, which is volatile, but also means you can have games where he goes 4 for 80 and a touchdown. They've taken that off the table too. So I'm probably still holding on to him over Tucker Kraft because Kraft earned 2 targets in his first start. I think he's 4th on the team in the pecking order.
You may not have heard he scored a touchdown.
He did. Yeah, no, I heard that on my bench when we needed it most to make the playoffs.
So, sorry about that.
So I'm probably still holding Pitts to the extent that he gets maybe back to where he was earlier in the year. But my order for rest of season rankings almost certainly goes Logan Thomas, Pitts, or Kraft.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. By the way, this plays into some of my complaints. He's tired of Lamar not bringing home the fantasy bacon, even though he's playing at almost an MVP level in real life. Should he trade for CJ Stroud? Who rest of season, who is scoring more fantasy points, Lamar Jackson or CJ Stroud, Kyle?
Dude, that's a legitimate question.
I think it is CJ Stroud. Just the way the team is constructed, the way they're playing for now over a month. They're going to be in a lot of back and forth games fighting for that division. It just seems like he's one of this year's volume superstars, even though they've tried to go run heavy a few different times. I just don't think their defense is good enough. I do think CJ Stroud will probably outpoint Lamar. And then if Lamar does outpoint him, it's going to be on the back of probably 2 explosion games, So just maybe not as evenly distributed as the points probably with CJ Stroud. It is very, very close though. It's very, very
I mean, it's really close. And the playoff schedule is Jags, which is probably neutral, slightly negative, 49ers, which is tough. But then if you make it through that, you get to Miami, which that should be a very fun game. So, I think I'm going to go Stroud, though. Like you said, I think it's a similar range of outcomes. They're getting there in very different ways. But the floor on a weekly basis for Lamar feels, given how well they run the football and that they also have one of the best defenses in football, the floor feels, we saw it with the Chargers. It's 1 touchdown and he doesn't rush in a touchdown. And then with the playoffs coming up, that could lose you the week, where Stroud feels like 300 yards is coming closer and closer to his floor every single week.
Yeah, he's just locked in. It's almost like Justin Herbert's rookie season. I'm trying to think of a season to compare Stroud to, just where a rookie comes into every week, bankable volume.
Yeah.
Not very common, but
Herbert's the closest one. But Stroud is going to beat I think he's going to beat the rookie passing record this coming week if he didn't already.
So. Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure this is the week he gets it. He's crushing it, and he'll probably get the touchdown record this year as well. He's just by far the best statistical rookie we've seen.
And the supporting cast might finally be back to full strength. So Noah Brown should be back any week. So just things look very, very good for CJ Stroud. Is T. Higgins droppable? Very, very, very tough situation. He's been hurt several times this year. Now we have the horrible quarterback situation. I can understand not wanting to drop him. I can understand wanting to drop him. I honestly don't know what my answer would be. What do you say, Kyle?
I'll say not this week, because unless you play in a league where the managers are asleep at the wheel, there's not a ton to go pick up. I guess if you really need tight end, go get Pat Freiermuth if he was dropped or whatever. But on the odd or on the likely chance that those types of players aren't available this week specifically, you're not cutting him for Royce Freeman or whatever. In a week or two, when the next like spot starter high end RB2 shows up, it will be reasonable to drop him at that point.
Would you trade Amon-Ra St. Brown for Davante Adams, Olave, and Kincaid? A lot of value in this 3 for 1.
I think you got to do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate trading. 6 for 100 every single week for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you must really be hating your flex options. You must really be needing depth. You're not at all cutting the heart out of your team there. You're getting 2 like wide receiver 1-2 borderlines, and then a top 5 or 6 tight end. You're probably trying to shake up your season in a desperate bid to make the playoffs. Totally inoffensive deal. I would do it. Michelle is back. Happy Bar drop T. Higgins and or Amari Cooper for Tutu and or Guyton. I know we're not adding Jalen Guyton, correct, Kyle? Are we adding Tutu Atwell is the question.
No, we're definitely. I'd honestly be more likely to add Guyton, especially they like completely. We saw it. They literally benched Quentin Johnson last week, so Guyton's going to be out there for like 100% of the routes. He's not the best, and he'll be frustrating. But I actually think he's worth an add, not over Higgins or Cooper. To be clear, I think he's worth a little stash in deeper leagues. Tutu, for the most part, last week was a bit of an exception, but pretty much every other single game this year when Cooper Kupp has been playing, does not see the ball. He's still really efficient. Like they throw him 1 or 2 deep balls every game, but it's like 1 or 2 targets typically when Cooper Kupp is out there. Last week was I'm going to say it was probably an anomaly. Probably Kupp still not quite at full speed, even though he was out for all the routes. He's probably half decoy, right? He still got targeted, but not nearly the clip
he was decoying. He was decoying for sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to say by another week or two, Tutu's completely cuttable again, even if he's fringe starter right now.
Congrats to Chance for getting unbanned. What's up, man? Hopefully it wasn't too bad what you did. Lamar, Walker, and Diggs for Eckler, Gibbs, and Adams. This is pretty interesting 3 for 3. A lot of big names. What do we tell Freezy?
Let's do some crossing out. Diggs and Adams are probably close. I'd slight Diggs edge, but ever since Kincaid's in the lineup, like we're not quite at top 5 fantasy numbers for Diggs, but also we're not there with Adams either. I don't think so. Walker, can you cross out Walker and Gibbs? Given that we don't think we'll see Walker we might not see him this week. We're like coin flipping. Think we can cross those out? Trying to just do the numbers quickly.
Gibbs, are you asking if I prefer Gibbs to Walker rest of season? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Interesting. I think I'm closer than you are.
Diggs. I honestly think the best player is probably Steph Diggs, but I think there's more overall value on side 2, especially since there's the quarterback on side 1.
That's kind of how I feel too. I think the problem is like if you're redrafting right now, it's still not like you're taking Lamar as the 16th pick. He's probably still in that 3rd round. Good pick in the 3rd round, but Eckler, even as he continues to look slower and more washed, he's still a heavily targeted goal line back on an offense that typically can put up points. I mean, the offense isn't the problem for the Chargers. In most weeks, they did struggle against the Ravens. It's that they find the dumbest ways to lose every single game, every single way in the 4th quarter. We still like Eckler as a workhorse back on this team, even if his efficiency, we'll see about that.
Yeah, sorry.
So,
I was scanning other questions when you were talking through it too. Is how I got kind of caught off guard. There's another crazy trade. Devin Achane and Tank Dell, 2 of the trendiest names in fantasy all year, for Amon-Ra and Javonte Williams, who played through a neck injury in week 12. Only one side is healthy, although I guess it's not that healthy if he had a neck injury.
Yeah, he played. He did he get listed as questionable and came back or what?
He did. I feel like you got to go side 2 here. Amon-Ra is the best player in the deal, and we just don't even know what's going on with Devin Achane. And he just seems like a classic could get immediately hurt again. So I would make that trade. As much as I hate the trade Tank Dell, there's obviously zero comparison between Amon-Ra and Tank. And you could be upgrading at both wide receiver and running back there.
Yep. Agreed.
So you got to make the train, Yeatman. PJ, one more time. Too. He's wondering if he should trade or hold Davante Adams. It seems like that he is what he is at this point, doesn't it? Like 7 catches, 83 scoreless yards. That's like a good week. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think you're like pulling one over on any of your league mates. I think we all kind of know what he is. He's still clearly the number one receiver on a pretty mediocre team that doesn't project to score a lot of points on a given week. I don't think you're going to like gain a ton of value by moving him. And if anything, he's probably like marginally underrated because the guys who see every single target on their team typically score a lot of points, even if their team kind of sucks. So
Unbanned. Here's his question: Jalen Hurts and DeAndre Swift or CJ? Who is CJ? Oh, CJ Stroud. Yeah, CJ and Bijan.
Yes, him.
Yeah, so Hurts and Swift for CJ Stroud and Bijan. I think I'm sticking. I think even though it's quarterback, I mean, Jalen Hurts is the best player in this deal, isn't he, Kyle?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess very marginally. I actually go, give me the Bijan side.
I'm going the Hurts side. I think Hurts is like basically the most unbenchable player in fantasy football. Not that you're ever benching like an RB1, but I mean, I don't think any week, it's pretty rare I find any quarterback to play over Jalen Hurts. The floor is just so absurdly high and the ceiling is hit frequently enough. And I don't know, DeAndre Swift could probably still pretty easily outpoint Bijan. I think Bijan will outpoint DeAndre Swift, but I don't think it's like guaranteed. I'd probably just keep.
It's pretty likely. I think it's pretty likely. It's really tough for DeAndre Swift to find the end zone these days. Dude cannot. I mean, no surprise. You've got the best goal line player in the NFL, and not only that, but like the best goal line player of the past 10 years. Like it's just so freaking automatic when that guy gets at the one, and somehow his teammates put him at the one 2 times a game.
It is nuts. It is nuts. I would consider
every single game
getting in the end zone if I were an Eagle.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be real tough. Even like you look at how bad the Falcons offense has been and how much they like using dumb other non-Bijan players in the red zone. Even then, if you're saying they have similar like red zone roles, you're getting a better goal line role from Bijan. You're getting more passing game work. So I think that difference is enough to make up the Hurts CJ difference, but it's close.
I'll give you the final word on that one. Harlan, a lot of trade questions tonight. Everyone's trading Amon-Ra St. Brown.
We got this one already, I think.
Did we? No, we did not. We had a similar one. Harlan wants to trade. Did we? I don't know. Amon-Ra for Olave. No, this is different, actually. Amon-Ra for Olave, Davante Adams, and Kincaid. Either way,
there's no way it's different. It's literally the exact same.
Is it the exact same? Well, we're still doing it. We are still.
Give me the three V's.
Timothy is wondering. He's checking the Week 12 results. Dalton Kincaid had a down game. Pat Freiermuth had a big game, but we're not dropping Dalton Kincaid for Pat Freiermuth, correct?
That is correct.
Slime is wondering, trade Puka and Aaron Jones for Bijan. He is stacked at receiver. I have an answer. I think you probably do too. What do you say, Kyle?
You give me your answer first. I'm a little closer to torn. I mean, I guess
you're pulling the trigger on this one.
Yeah, I'm taking Bijan, I guess, but mostly because like I just don't have a lot of faith in what we're gonna get from Aaron Jones rest of season.
No,
and I'm also a little spooked on Puka. So
on both. I was scanning through the next gen stats this morning, and Aaron Jones is like bottom 3 in rush yards over expected per attempt. He's on a second unique injury of the year. We don't know if he's going to play in Week 13. Puka, the Rams, it's not about Puka. It's just about the Rams' offensive environment just keeps getting worse and worse. Even though they had a big day yesterday, like Matthew Stafford, man, just like looks like he wants to retire. And I still want Puka on my team, but Bijan is in the ascendance. I don't think even the Falcons are going to mess this up. He's clearly becoming the centerpiece of the offense. I think you got to make the trade, Slime. QB for Week 13, need a good pickup.
You ain't getting one.
Who's your top? There's a few. There's some of the. Who's the top from your article though? Nope. Then I'll scan real quick who I put on my little list for the Sunday aftermath.
There are no good ones. It's Gardner Minshew. He plays the Titans. It's a good matchup with the Titans, but he's thrown like 1 touchdown in the past 3 weeks. Like their running game's getting going. He's the best pickup because a lot of the guys just crested 50%. Like Russell Wilson and Jordan Love got over 50%. You can check for those guys, but I don't feel right recommending them if it's less likely not they're even available for you.
Derek Carr is playing the Lions.
He was my number 2.
The Lions are hemorrhaging passing game production. All I'm going to say, Kenny Pickett's playing the Cardinals. That's all I'm going to say.
I thought about it.
That's all I'm going to say. He's an option out there. Even Bryce Young, if you're super desperate.
Jesus. All right. Come on.
I'm just saying, these are the things. This is what people are talking about. These are just the things people are saying. Bryce Young's going to need a good performance this week, to put it mildly. He's facing the pass funnel in the Bucs. He needs to do something. And, a real great week, too, for him there. Firing his coach, and maybe he has to learn a new system. So he's not going to learn a new system, but you know what I mean. All right, let's scan through a few questions right here. Hello from Zinkum. Looking forward to the playoffs and a redraft. Who is the better stash in case of injury, Rico Dowdle or Rashawn Johnson?
I think it's Dowdle. He's played good this year, and I think there's a very clear 1-to-1. They've been healthy scratching Deuce Vaughn throughout the year. It'd be more likely Malik Davis, who I think they put back on their practice squad, gets called up for touches than Deuce, who's tiny and healthy scratched often, really takes a ton of work. So I think it's Dowdle. I think actually both are fine stashes, with Foreman banged up and Roschon being a good pass catcher and pass blocker. That's a strong role to have if you can pair it with rushing work. But Dowdle clearly has the 1-to-1. One guy gets hurt and he could be dropping high-end RB2 numbers.
He not only has that, he also has a little standalone value at this point.
Bit, yeah.
Where he's getting 6 to 10 weekly touches, sometimes even a little more if they're blowing someone out like they did the Commanders last week. So I think he's got ever so slight standalone value, and like you said, the contingency value is just.
There was about 10 minutes last week where he had as many season touchdowns as Tony Pollard did. Tony Pollard got him back, but I think Pollard's at 4 and Dowdle's at 3.
I actually did not know that. Did not need to hear that. Tell this person who to start tonight. We know the answer, but just save the line.
Brother, we're starting Justin Fields.
We are starting Justin Fields. He's going to go nuclear. I think the Bears are going to win this game. I have 3 points on the Vikings in my confidence points pool, but I do have a horrible feeling that the Bears are going to win this game. So Joseph sending thank you. Thank you, man. Yeah, it's a tiebreaker. Yeah. Hopefully we could help, though. Should we drop Jeff Wilson for Zach Moss in a PPR league? The unkillable Zach Moss. He just keeps coming back no matter what we do.
Yeah, I'd be holding Zach Moss over Jeff Wilson long term. There's maybe some standalone, sort of Rico Dowdle adjacent standalone value with Jeff Wilson, but it's mostly in the event that Raheem Mostert gets hurt, because I think even if Achane comes back, he's not getting all the carries. It wouldn't make sense. So he's kind of the Raheem Mostert adjacent replacement, maybe some standalone value, but Moss also has that he's a 1-for-1 replacement to a guy ahead of him thing. He's better than Jeff Wilson, and he also has standalone value. Even if it's slight, it's got to be just as much, if not more, than Jeff Wilson.
Makes a lot of sense to me. But they're LOLing and me throwing Bryce.
Good.
I'm just saying, there's 6 teams on by. If you're totally desperate, he's got a matchup. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying, folks. Please do not cancel me. Why can we not bring ourselves to drop Dameon Pierce? They have Devin Singletary too. Have Likely and Goddard. Drop Likely or Pierce for the Muth. I think we got to cut Dameon Pierce. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah. I mean, he's not doing anything for you. He has no purpose on your roster, unfortunately.
No.
Whereas even though Freiermuth, once Goddard comes back, unless we get another 9 for 120 game, you're benching him. He will give you 1 start this week. I'm going to have him ranked ahead of Isaiah Likely this week. And that is 1 more start than Dameon Pierce has given you in the next few weeks. So there you go. Someone
might look at the box score from yesterday and see that Devin Singletary only outcarried Dameon Pierce 6-5, but he outtouched him 12-5. I think he played over 80% of the snaps. The Texans just couldn't run. It was kind of breather type work for Dameon Pierce. And you just said, what would you say you do here? It's kind of the situation he's in with Dameon Pierce, and just he's not doing it.
And you were right. 81% of the snaps. That's all of them. I mean, Dameon Pierce is a backup in the truest sense. He's, like you said, breather work is putting it kindly.
It is. Lindorfin's back. Are we more prone to rostering 2 defenses down the stretch? I have an answer to this. What would you say, though, first, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm much more likely to roster 2 defenses right now because 1 individual start matters so much more. I mean, 1 individual start is difference in you advancing and not, whereas the week 5 start in terms of your chances of winning a championship is equally as valuable as the week 13 start, the week 1 start, the week 4 start, etc. So much more likely to do it.
Yeah, the stakes are so much higher, like you said. We have a better idea of which defenses are actually going to score points in fantasy, just for a variety of reasons. Which defenses are actually good, which defenses are aligned, which defenses are aligned with good offenses, aka playing teams playing from behind. And also just the waiver wire is so barren this time of year, that when I look at like the projected points for the upcoming week, there's just no one worth stashing a lot of times, a running back or wide receiver. So like rather than just dropping a good defense who has a good matchup the following week, I am very prone to keeping around 2 defenses this time of year. There's no shame whatsoever. Sekou needs DJ Moore to outscore Madison by 12 points tonight. This could be a heavy ask. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm thinking you're probably like going to guess Madison projects for like 12 points essentially, and DJ Moore maybe projects like 15 or something like that. So you're a pretty big dog to do it, but it is, I think, advantageous to have like big play potential, 12 targets. We literally saw a 200-yard game from DJ Moore. If you want to have like not a big projected points advantage, you at least want to have variance on your side, and DJ Moore is going to give that to you. So you're a pretty big dog to win. I'll say like 25% chance to win, but you're alive tonight. You'll have a good sweat.
Yeah, that's all you could say. You're a dog, but you are alive. It could definitely happen. Really need DJ Moore to go nuts tonight. But by the way, we're actually about caught up with all the new questions. We got about 10 or 12 minutes left. If you have a question, get it out there. No time like the present. What do we think of the Seattle running backs rest of season? A situation that is just getting a little bit messier every single week. We don't know if Kenneth Walker is going to play in week 13. What do we think about the Seahawks and how these touches are going to allocate down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, we did see Charbonnet, even before Ken Walker missed time, was seeing his role increase drastically. He was really playing scarcely early in the season and had formed a full-blown committee. He was clearly the number 2 in the committee. Most of his role was running routes, but he had started to push Ken Walker for work. I still think Ken Walker comes back and gets 55% of the carries. Like, we're like 70% after 2 months of football, or a month and a half of football. So I'm going to say rest of season rankings, Ken Walker, given that we don't know his status for this week, is probably like right on that fringe RB1 range. He was like a top 4 running back for me after 8 games. He's not there anymore. And Charbonnet, given that we could get probably just one more like potential RB1 adjacent game, like low end RB2, maybe more like the RB 26, 27, because you're not really trying to play him once Ken Walker comes back.
I think when all 32 teams are playing, which again, even week 14, we only have 30 teams. I'm not entirely sure if Ken Walker will actually be on that RB1-2 borderline anymore. He basically doesn't have any passing game work. And he was a guy where the situation was tenable as long as he was getting essentially all the early down work. Even like 70% of the early down work, I think he'd be getting into kind of like troublesome territory with Ken Walker.
Seahawks get Cowboys coming up, then 49ers, and then Eagles.
It's Jover.
Eagles, yeah, it's not great. And then Titans, who are much better against the pass, or much better for opponents' passing attacks than they are for running games. So
it's Jover.
Look,
Mr. 413 is back. Isaiah Pacheco or Devin Achane rest of season. Is Devin Achane going to play this week? I think he probably will. But who do we think rest of season?
I think Achane is going to play this week, and I'll say Achane rest of season because Pacheco's fine. He probably like medium.
Pacheco plays football.
He does play football. More football than we've seen from Achane, but like Pacheco for a fantasy sense is in a lot of weeks what do you say you do here? You're good for what, 90 yards, and your team refuses to run when they get in the red zone. That changed a little bit last week. We got 2 rushing scores, only got 55 yards. So maybe he proves me wrong over the rest of the season, but I would just rather shoot for the moon with Achane because you're going to face some good teams in the playoffs. So I'd like to have a guy who maybe could be a top 5 running back. I guess like on average, Pacheco probably beats him, but like this is the playoffs. I want the fun guy.
I think you are right. It's a situation where the Pacheco, neither the floor or upside are high enough to not shoot for the moon. So I would shoot for the moon with Achane, just also with the caveat that I bet this guy has not suffered his last injury of the season, which he's just not a guy this small in his first year in the league. They were asking so much of him. I just don't know. He's someone I think you come back next year with like a better understanding of how to stay healthy in the NFL, even at his size. It seems like someone I hope he gets out of the year without suffering a serious injury.
Yeah,
hurt
hurt late in the offseason, then hurt after a few great weeks, and then re-aggravates the injury as soon as he comes back. Like, not a great pattern to set.
Yeah, so I just hope that Devin Achane gets a full off season and can kind of come into year two with like a much better idea of how to stay healthy at the NFL, especially as a small man in an NFL backfield. Should we trade Saquon Barkley? Has Kyron, Pacheco, and Achane. Starting Kyron and Saquon, but I don't know. What do you think? What are we telling JN Sports Cards, Kyle?
I mean, if you can get like a wide receiver one for Barkley, I'd probably, assuming you like would use that guy, I would say so. Mostly because like I think Pacheco's probably just the guy he has always been. I guess if Jerick McKinnon's issue is long term, we did have Pacheco catch 5 passes. I don't have any reason to believe Jerick McKinnon will miss like a large number of games, but that actually would change the calculus a bit. I'm still going to say you're probably fine trading, even if he's not an RB1, because I don't think he finishes the year from now to the end of the season as the 12th best running back or better, but he's close. He's not far off from that. And I think Barkley's not that much better in that his offense, I get Tommy DeVito's turning things around a bit, but he's still Tommy DeVito. So I can carry it away. I still think Barkley's kind of capped at best, like, oh, the RB9 overall because he got 28 touches, but like we're not getting 3 touchdown games from him.
And I do wonder with this season over for the Giants,
over.
And he's heading back to free agency, if they kind of come to some sort of understanding with each other that, listen, man, we're not going to like beat your wheels off essentially down the stretch, where just maybe he's not really a 20-touch player. That's really getting in like the forecasting territory. But I wouldn't be shocked if maybe they dialed back his workload ever so slightly down the stretch. But again, that's a total guess. This isn't really a question as much as a comment from Chuka. He's picking up Brandon Cooks, playing him over Puka, and he's picking up Pickens and playing him over Kupp in week 3. I can't say I would recommend either of those moves. Would you, Kyle?
No, at least Brandon Cooks is like, I'm getting this guy on this sick offense. As much as we got the no Matt Canada turnaround, didn't it still mean 0 touchdowns for Kenny Pickett? I don't think
it did 0
touchdown.
So that would be
and Kenny Pickett also
finished.
did nothing, right? Like George Pickens, sorry. George Pickens also definitely did nothing, if I remember correctly.
He did nothing. And I don't know, they seem kind of upset with George Pickens. Like, it doesn't seem like a terribly great situation. But nothing was 3 catches for 58 yards, by the way. It wasn't
that's literally 2 weeks ago, 4 for 38. The week before that, 3 for 45, 2 for -1, 1 for 22. Like, I think part of the problem with the like pregame reports that like, oh, they're going to get George Pickens more involved and they're going to get Jalen Warren more involved specifically from the Pickens angle is the problem wasn't that Pickens wasn't like out there. It's that he doesn't get separation and Kenny Pickett doesn't want to throw these completely covered 50-50 balls to him. Like, that's not really much of a thing you can change because stylistically that's just who he is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So yeah, Chuka, maybe just take a step back, reevaluate, reassess. Adam wants to know, we're talking about shooting for the moon with Devin Achane. Should we trade Monty Demont for Devin Achane?
Yeah, I think so. I think Dave Montgomery's a heavily used 1B, but shoot for the moon and try and get like the most efficient back ever, hopefully. But I think it's worth the gamble. So
many Achane questions. Michelle wondering, we're still starting Raheem Mostert with Achane. Yep. Is he still top 24?
Oh yeah, he's still top 24 for sure.
I think he won't be as high as he was early in the season. When there was a few games with Devin Achane where Mostert was still like RB like 10 to 15 range. I think more like
the first Achane game, Mostert also had like 150 and 3 touchdowns.
That was the game when they scored 70 points. I think he'll be more like the RB 18 to 22 range, but he'll for sure. And that is on the low end. People could pretty safely project for more than that. That's a conservative projection. But yeah, Raheem Mostert will still be very, very startable. Priceless Pigeon is wondering, there's a lot of names here. 16 teams. Jamar Chase, Breece Hall, and Khalil Herbert for Keenan Allen and Justin Jefferson. A lot of big names, a lot at stake in a 16 team. You don't have any margin for error in a 16 teamer. What are we telling Priceless Pigeon?
Hell yeah, brother. You're getting like 2. I like Justin Jefferson opting out playing tonight and then gets the bye week coming up. So you're waiting a little bit, but going into the playoffs, like this is how you build a Death Star team is you get 2 top 5 receivers to throw into your lineup. Well, you've also got CMC. Like if we're redrafting right now, CMC is either the 101 or 102, him and Tyreek. And then Justin Jefferson, knowing that we're definitely getting him back after the bye, probably slots in as like the 108 or whatever. And then Keenan Allen's probably, at worst, exactly. It just depends on how you value that one missed week. And then Keenan Allen, he's probably got to be like the wide receiver 3 on the year. That's probably where you're redrafting. Maybe he's the 4 or whatever. You're getting like 3 first-round picks on your roster out of this. Whereas like Herbert's maybe a mid-rounder, and Hall, for as much as we love him, it's really hard for him to do a lot when this team is as bad as they are. This is like a windmill for me.
They're also complaining about his running style. The Jets are in shambles.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Oh,
they're just in shambles. I agree with Kyle. The Pigeon has another question, a 20-teamer. Would you trade Pop Douglas and Aaron Jones for Austin Eckler? That seems like an auto yes, too.
Auto.
Depth, you can't discount bodies in a 20-teamer, but
they got to be healthy for you to not have to discount them. And in this case, neither of them are.
It is a slam dunk still for the Pigeon, who likes a challenge in fantasy football, very deep leagues. Dylan Fink, would we trade CJ Stroud and Jaden Reed for Lamar? Sorry, the period is throwing me off. For Lamar, Russ Wilson, and Zay Flowers. Kyle, interpret this question and answer it.
I would assume, I guess, would you be getting 2 quarterbacks because it's a super flex league? One
yeah,
would hope so.
I'm not sure. Dylan, give us a little more information there. We will get back to your question, I promise. Just
monologue for a second.
Elaborate with your question, Dylan, here. And I'm going to answer another question. If Kyle's not ready, I'll answer. Half PBR down 25. Can DJ Moore and Khalil get me over the top tonight? I shouldn't start Ty Chandler, right? No, I'm starting Khalil Herbert or Ty Chandler, even though the output can end up pretty similar. It's just much more projectable with Khalil Herbert. It's within Ty Chandler's range of outcomes to, I'd say, play Khalil Herbert to a point standstill. But I just think it's safer with Khalil Herbert. I think DJ Moore and Khalil Herbert, 25 points is a very realistic expectation. You might not get it, but it's probably a greater than 50% chance you're going to get it.
Yep,
right,
I was going to say the same thing.
Dylan has not rephrased this question. Dylan, if you're listening, please rephrase your question. Achane or Javante rest of season for Mr. 143. I think I called him Mr. I said something else different. Devin Achane or Javante Williams rest of season.
Well, he said at least I remember you saying his first name, the Eatman.
I did. I dialed off that because not entirely sure what it means. But
don't worry about it, Gramps. Does Javante cross the threshold of like this guy has a high enough floor ceiling combo? Honestly, I don't think so. Like I love Javante, but he's not getting a ton of passing down work. He gets targeted on early downs, but that does make him really dependent on game script. Team's fine, but it's not like a team where when they like the Lions running backs, when they get rolling downhill, you can get 30 carries for the both of them. I'm not worried or not optimistic in many weeks that they actually get rolling downhill for the Broncos. So again, let's shoot for the moon with Achane.
Yeah, just Javante, he's like purely volume. It's just not much to really like beyond that. We like volume, of course. But yeah, the floor isn't like amazing. The ceiling is really not great. And yeah, it's Devin Achane time. If the either or is Javante. We haven't heard from Elia this week. Elia, sorry, I always struggle with the pronunciations. Have we already dropped Jerry Jeudy? Are Pop Douglas and Rashee Rice more startable, Kyle?
I mean, Rashee Rice is more startable by a country mile. Pop Douglas is banged up. I don't know what his status is for this week. If you're choosing between Pop Douglas and Jerry Jeudy, your season's already over. Luckily, you have Rashee Rice as an option, it seems. And Rashee Rice is very startable.
I could see Jerry Jeudy having a few big games. I just feel like get the feeling they're going to need him. Yeah, I don't think it's even really close between Rashee Rice and
they have needed him for a while.
That is true, brother. They have needed Jerry Jeudy. Anybody have any last-second questions? We're about to blow out of here. But if you got one you really need us to answer the next 10 seconds while I filibuster is the time to ask it. And if you don't, he said he's got Kyron. Step off. That sounds aggressive. He's here every week. He's a big Rotoworld fan. We love him. Western Goods. Is it time to drop JSN if he needs to activate Pat Fryermuth from injured reserve?
Yeah, if you need a tight end slot, that's fine.
Someone is blaming Denny for dropping Rashee Rice.
Is he a regression candidate?
Yeah, yikes, Denny.
Denny, the math nerd, was like, this guy is going to have fewer yards per route run because all players are the same.
By the way, thank you so much for the kind words. PB had 2.5 hard seltzer. Should he have another one? It is Monday. It was just a holiday, too. It's kind of aggressive. I feel like the Monday after the long holiday weeks we're having.
No, I feel like that's the off-ramp you need. You had like 8 each day over the weekend. On average, some days 4, some days 9. And now this is the off ramp. 2.5 is a good off ramp. 4 would be dangerous tonight. But you can't cut yourself off cold turkey in the spirit of Thanksgiving.
That's a good
You
point.
need 2.5.
That's a good point. I forgot about the off ramp. Sorry, Kai. I don't know if you have anywhere to go. We're just answering a few more. Elisha everyone is wondering about Devin Achane. Devin Achane or Devontae Smith next week. I'll pull up the schedule real quick. In a vacuum, I mean, I think even in a vacuum, we probably are preferring Devontae Smith there, correct?
Yeah, for the first Achane game back, if we have Devontae Smith, that's what we're rolling with.
The Dolphins are playing the Commanders. The Eagles this week are playing the 49ers. They do give up some passing game production.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'm still probably going Davante. We'll see if we get some good coach speak on Achane this week, but I think most likely, no matter what they say, give me 1 week of Achane on the bench. 1 week, and then I think we're probably starting him next week.
Don't let Denny off the hook. Don't let Denny off the hook. Hook is all I can say. Terp. Yeah, he's betraying a fellow Terp. Denny's a Maryland alum. He doesn't disclose this information. PPR League, struggling with 3, choosing between Cal Ridley. Everyone hates when I call him Cal, apparently. Cal Ridley, Austin Eckler, Jahmyr Gibbs. Big group of players. Who are you starting with? Which 3 are you starting out of this group, Kyle? First
Eckler Gibbs for sure. I don't have a strong take between McLaurin and Ridley.
I think Calvin has passed McLaurin at this point.
Yeah, I'm in for that. Sure.
I'm in for that. All right, this is the final question. Baird's been hanging around all night. Keeper League, he's starting Adams and Evans. Has Hopkins, Rice, and Cooper on the bench. McBride is week 14 on bye. Drop Cooper. So this is where he was wondering about earlier with his drop. What do we think, Kyle? Should Baird drop Cooper or Ferguson?
You drop Cooper to
what? Oh, God.
Hold on, wait.
I know, I'm so confused.
I assume there's a missing F there. Drop Cooper for Ferguson would be
my
intuition on how to read it. And the answer for me is yes. Like, he's neck and neck behind in my weekly rankings, almost certainly, with Rashee Rice. Hopkins will be ahead of him. Now, obviously, Adams and Evans are ahead of him. So he's buried on your, quote, depth chart, and you need the start of Ferguson. And he's a good start to pick up, so easy.
Okay, he has Ferguson. We're confused, Baird. We're so confused. I can't remember who you were trying to add. But we're out of time, unfortunately, for the rest of this Q&A. We hope we get a high-scoring game tonight. That's what we really, really need out of the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields, go out and earn that starting job for 2024. Boy, do the Bears have an absolutely impossible decision made coming up in the draft yet again, Kyle. So for Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much. There's good questions are coming in, but we got to go. Unfortunately. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern.